In the previous video, you learned how to use the Epilogue laser cutter to engrave an image. In this video, we will be discussing how to do vector cutting instead. Now you might be wondering what the difference is between raster and vector, and that is a very important difference. A raster image is made up of pixels, which are essentially many tiny dots. When you assemble all of these dots together, you get the completed image. The advantage of a raster is that pretty much any program can open and use it. However, if you try to resize it and make it larger than originally intended, you will lose quality. To contrast, a vector image isn't made up of pixels, it's made up of paths. A path is essentially a line or a curve that has color or other attributes assigned to it. Now, the advantage of a vector is that you can resize it without losing any quality. However, not every program can open, use, or manipulate vector images. As you may recall from the previous video, the laser cutter will engrave a raster image, but if there's a vector of a certain width, it will be cut instead. In this video, I will demonstrate how to use Adobe Illustrator to set up some simple vector cuts. I have Adobe Illustrator open, and before I do anything else, I want to change the measuring units so that everything will be in inches. If you go to Edit, Preferences, Units, you'll see that some are in inches and some are in points. Points might be useful if you're creating an image to be used for the web, but since we're working with physical material, it's a lot easier to think about if you set it to inches. So I'm going to change all of those and select OK. Next, I need to create my artboard. The artboard is essentially the canvas that I will be putting my vectors on. To do this, I'm going to select New. Over here on the side, you can set what size your artboard will be. You typically want to set this to the size of the material that you're working with. For this example, I'm going to say that mine is 6 inches wide by 6 inches high. I'm going to hit Create. And there is my artboard. The easiest vector to make is a straight line. If you go to the toolbar on the left side of the screen, the line segment tool is here. Once you click it, it's very easy to use. It's just click and drag. There's also a Shapes tool slightly below it. If you right-click on it, you'll see that there are other options. For the most part, you'll probably just be using Rectangle and Ellipse. This tool is also very easy to use. Just click and drag. Once you've created paths, you can assign attributes to them. If you select one and go to the top left corner, you'll see these two drop-down boxes. The first one is Fill. That determines what color the interior of your path will have. You can really set this to anything you want it to be. However, for the purposes of cutting, you probably just want it to be transparent. The second drop-down box is Stroke. This is an outline that will follow the path you have created. By default, it's set to black, and again, you can make this any color you want. The laser cutter doesn't really read color, so you can make this bright magenta if you want it to, but most people like to stick to black or red. In order for this vector to be cut, you need to have a stroke, and the stroke needs to be 0.001 inches. If you click away, don't be alarmed, it isn't actually gone. If you zoom in, you'll see that it's there, it's just a lot thinner than it was before. Now let's cut something actually useful. I'm going to zoom back out to view my entire artboard, and I'm going to delete everything on the screen. For this example, I'm going to say I want to cut this 6 by 6 piece of material into 4 equal-sized squares. The first thing I'm going to do to help me is turn on the rulers. To do this, you go to View, Rulers, Show Rulers. And you'll see that these little guides have shown up at the top. This just helps you visualize what size your piece is a little bit better. In order to divide this into fourths, I will need 2 lines, one horizontal and one vertical. I'm going to go to the Line Segment tool. If I hold down Shift as I'm creating the line, it will force it to be perfectly horizontal or vertical, depending on which way you drag. Now, I don't have to position this exactly in the center right away. If you go up to Transform, you can set the position with this X and Y values. To force this to be exactly center, I'm going to enter 3 inches and 3 inches. And to make this the width of the entire piece of material, I'm going to set this to 6 and hit Enter. Now you just want to double check that you have a stroke of any color and that that stroke is 0.001 inches wide to make sure it will actually be cut. I'm going to repeat this process with the vertical line, holding down Shift to force it to be perfectly vertical. Going to select Transform. X goes to 3 to place it center, Y goes to 3 to place it center, and for this the height will be 6 to make sure it is the entire material. Now if you click away you might think there's nothing there, but again if you zoom in you'll see that the lines are there, they are just a lot thinner than they were. Now that we've created our vectors, it's time to send our job to the laser engraver. To do this, just like in the previous video, you go to File, Print. Make sure the engraver is selected for the printer. Then go into Setup. Preferences will open the same window that you will recall from the previous video. Most of these settings were already discussed, and you find them on the Quick Use Guide. However, one difference is under Job Type you have to make sure that Vector is selected instead of Raster. There is also a bug in Adobe Illustrator that I'd like to mention. Once you set the piece size, in this case 6x6, and hit OK, you'll notice here where it says Media that the size didn't actually change. To make sure that this change goes through, you have to select Setup and then Print one more time. Once all of your settings are correct, hit this final print button to send your job to the engraver. And that is how you set up some simple vector cutting with Adobe Illustrator. Go make something awesome.